Welcome to From Assessment to Implementation with CViConnect. Your presenter is Stephanie Steffer. Your ACV REP beginning code for this session is the word oak, O-A-K. Again, your beginning code for this session is the word oak, O-A-K. All right, well, let Stephanie take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm Stephanie Steffer, and thank you for joining me today. I am hoping to be able to walk you guys through how to use CViConnect to get your students with cortical visual impairments from assessment to implementation. So a little bit about myself. This is my 10th year of teaching as a teacher consultant for the visually impaired. I graduated from Eastern Michigan University back when we still had a program there. And I also received my endorsement for early childhood education. And that's been a big focus for most of my career, just making sure that I educate kids from the whole spectrum. And so it's really helped me kind of understand that earlier end as well. And hopefully I can help answer some of those questions that you guys might have for the whole gamut. Do have experience with kids in the high school level and working on those transition plans as well. But we all have kind of our niche of what works best for us, right? So let's move on. I also do have my Perkins-Roman endorsement. I earned that a couple years ago when that first came out. So that helps me be able to kind of help score kids and answer questions in relation to the CVI range assessment that we complete. Today's learning objectives that I hope to be able to work through with you would be that you would be able to use our platform to help score and monitor your students with the CVI range, and then also using the platform to be able to assign those activities that you feel are best fit for your kids. And then as well, that after the presentation, you'll also be able to kind of assess the data that the application provides to you in order to kind of modify the activities you're providing to students and making sure that your kids have access to their curriculum, whatever that case may be. So a little bit about our story in the CViConnect team. This all began what feels like forever ago. At a family function, we were just talking about how I use the iPad for kids with visual impairments. And 10 years ago, that looked a lot different than it does now and all the apps that we have available. But we started talking about different things. And my uncle happens to be a software writer for an app system that uses the iPad for hospitals. And so he created an app where hospitals could send patients home and care for them from their home instead of in the hospital to reduce risk of infection. And so they use that system through Life Science Technologies. And through hearing our story as teachers for the visually impaired and individuals who serve the blind and visually impaired community, he was really incited and wanted to do more for us. And so luckily for me, he was able to and willing to work with us. So I talked to Julie Cushman, her and I were at the time working for Kalamazoo, and we were super excited diving into the CVI world and really trying to figure out what Dr. Roman had and what all this research was telling us and what we were supposed to do with these kids, trying to figure it all out. And we worked with the Life Science Technologies team to create CViConnect. And we're super excited to share with our home state of Michigan what we've been working on over this time. So Julie and I are the two teachers for the visually impaired and on the team, and we have been creating the activities based on what our students on our current caseloads have needed. So if a student needs access to something, we're creating it, and then if it works for other kids, we're just making it available to everybody else. And so it's really kind of started as a way for our caseloads to get a little bit more manageable and help people out. And then it became so much more when we realized that this could be kind of a platform that so many people could benefit from. And we're hoping that you guys will see how that can help you out and hopefully give us feedback if you think there's other things that you would like to see on it, because it's constantly growing and changing based on what people need and what that looks like in different counties and how people need it across the country. So we're constantly taking in that feedback and trying to improve upon what we have to offer for you. So basically our mission is just to offer you an easy, consistent method to provide services for your kids with cortical visual impairments. That's data driven, and that is the foundation of what I want to show you today. So let's take a closer look. To get started, you would log into our website, CViConnectPro.com. And in order to do that, you do have to have an account. But I've added some screenshots along the way today so that you can see what that would look like should you choose to get on the CViConnect platform. And even if you decide that maybe CViConnect Professional isn't the best way for you, I still hope that you can take away some notes today about just in general how you can use different data or observations with your students to better provide services for them. So even though the foundation is around our platform and how we use it, I'm hoping that you can also get some nuggets of information that even outside of the platform you could find helpful. So just so you do know, our entire system is HIPAA compliant. That comes from, again, like I mentioned before, the Life Science Technologies team uses the hospital end, and so they are fully aware of all and being compliant with HIPAA laws. And so any information you are putting in there into the platform is completely safe, so you don't have to worry about any identifiable information getting out or anything like that. Today, what I want to talk to you guys a little bit about is this student menu. So we're going to go into there first and take a look at how we can help that. And as I mentioned before, everything that we're doing is data driven, right? So we hear that all the time from our administrators. They want to know what kind of data you're collecting in order to make those decisions. That's what's best for kids. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is start here with collecting data, right? So that's exactly what we're going to do. To do that, when you go into that student menu that I was showing you just a minute ago, you're going to see a student profile, and every single one of your students is going to have this menu option. So let me back up. That, again, every single student is going to have their own menu of options, meaning that each student has their own profile. So you can kind of make this your entire caseload or your entire county's worth of kids of CVI, but when you log in, you're only going to see the kids that you service. And so each team member can have their list of students. That means that your speech therapist can have their own list of students that they're working with. Your OTs, if they're going to be using it, can also have it. And they also all have access to the data that you're collecting, the activities there that are available. Everything I'm showing you today, each team member would have access to. So it kind of makes that generalization of services and that idea that we're all using the same resources to provide vision access for our kids a little bit easier to mainstream across the board. So you can see here we have demographics. That would just be your typical student information. And then we have team, and that again is where you would assign the correct team members for that student, right? Now, getting back on track, today I want to talk to you about that data, right? So the next thing that I'm going to show you is the CVI range. In order to get started with our kids with cortical visual impairments, we kind of need to see where they sit along those characteristics and kind of figure it out. Now, I know there's a lot of other research out there for neurological visual impairments, right? And I know there's a couple other presenters for MAER this year that are doing some great sessions on that, and I cannot wait to hear those as well. There's so much research that's starting to come about in brain-based visual impairments, and most of our foundation of our app has been around Dr. Roman's research because of the CVI range, and she has been gracious enough to allow us to have that in our system. But we're not afraid, we're not going to shy away from those other methods as well. So as that information comes forward, Julie and I and the team are definitely reading those books and hearing about those different podcasts and trying to learn more about how the brain is processing this vision information and how that impacts us in order to provide access for our students, and what types of interventions does that mean that they need. So as that comes about, we're definitely including more and more of that into our research and figuring out what works best for our students. But you will see that it does definitely have a Dr. Roman feel to it in certain areas, especially because we have the CVI range included in here. So the next page that you'll click on, then you'll click on the CVI range, and this will take you to this little map that you see on the right. And this is going to graph for you the CVI range scores over time. Now, I've just went in for this fictitious student and just put in some random scores so you could see how it would graph them over time and see that growth. Now, if you look at the actual numbers here, I hope that you would notice that a student isn't going to make gains from a 3 to a 5 to a 9 within the same school year. That would be amazing growth. And I sure wish that I could say that our app was making gains from a score of a 3 on the CVI range all the way to a 9 in one school year. But unfortunately, I don't think that I've seen any students make that much progress. And so if you are getting that progress from your students, bravo, and you should be talking instead of me. But I just wanted to throw some scores in there, like I said, so you could see how it would graph. So it's just something to just give you a picture of that in your head. And as you can also see on the graph, it has one line, the blue line there is for the rating 1. And the red line is for rating 2. And so it shows how both of those are growing over time. And the cool thing for this that I like to use it for is to download that graph and take to my IEP meetings, because from year to year, you are seeing a lot more growth. So you might see from a 3 to a 3.5 or a 3 to a 4 or whatever the case may be, depending on other things that are going on and how many interventions they're getting, you're going to see that growth. Or if you're not seeing that growth, that's great to take the team to and say, hey guys, what we're doing isn't working. We really need to reevaluate this, right? So either way, you can download that and you can upload it to your IEP system or just print it off and take it to the meeting and share it, whatever works best for you in your school district. But you definitely have that option to use and show that data to your teams. So I think that's great. So this is kind of your CVI overview, if you will, here. The next thing is that once you're ready to start a new range score or edit an old one, you would go in and you could see the CVI rating scale 1, and it's the exact same document that you would see on Dr. Roman's stuff. So if you've got any of her books or using any of her documents, all of the wording, everything is the same. The only thing that's really kind of a big difference is that it's electronic, but you have the ability to have some really cool tricks because it's electronic along with it. One of those options is having this comment area over here. This is incredibly helpful for when you're really not sure of why you're scoring a kid the way it is, or if you're kind of questioning what it is, or you just want to remember why you said it was resolved. You know, I do feel like this characteristic, this skill is resolved, but I want to remember why I felt that way, because I didn't, before going into this assessment, I wasn't sure if it would be resolved or not. You can make a quick note in there and let us remind yourself of why you did it. So this is how the student reacted to this particular visual stimulus that I presented. And because of that, I felt like it equaled this score, you know, so you're kind of giving yourself that reasoning if you feel like you need it, or if you feel the team would benefit from that. So if you have a parent that might question you on why you gave that score, you can put those comments in there to have all of that saved. And then too, the next time, because you're saving scores from year to year, the next time you go in, whenever you're doing the range, whether it's 3 times a year or 1 time a year or whatever your district requires of you, the next time you go in to score that, you'll see the last time you scored not only the scores that are there, but the reasoning behind why you did what you did. And so it kind of saves all of that in one place. And I find that super helpful. Above this on our website, you're on the page, there's actually a box up here that is comments as well. And I like to input environmental comments on that. So where was I doing the assessment? What was it like? Were there other kids in the background? Were they talking? Were we in a quieter room? What type of environment was I trying to complete that assessment in? Was I in the child's home where it's very familiar? Or was I at school? And, you know, kind of figuring all of that out helps me then as well, because if I did the assessment at home and then the child transitions to school age, when I get like that 2.5, 3-year-old kid who transitions and now they're not performing as well, well, my data would say that the reasoning is because we're maybe in a new environment. So I can use that to help support decisions and what's best for the student. In addition, we have rating 2 as well. So again, same document as Dr. Roman's document, except that it's electronic. And the cool thing on both rating scales, in fact, if you go back over here for a second, both of them have these little buttons that say show details. So I'm going to go back over to our next slide. And on here, I've actually already clicked that icon to show you in this screenshot what that would look like. So in the screenshot, I've got the characteristics of color and movement showing with all of their corresponding scoring criteria. So that's expanded out. So you're not just looking at a list of characteristics with their scores, you're actually seeing what that scoring criteria is as you're looking at it. So it's all kind of in one place for you. So for those of us who are still flipping back and forth, myself included, to see what that score means to make sure you're actually scoring correctly, you can have it all in one place rather than trying to flip between the scoring pages and that part of the book where she gives those scoring criteria for you to check on. And then in this corner over here, you can still see that comment box still exists. It's shrunk because of the screenshot that I took. I kind of shrunk down the screen a little bit, but that expands out as you continue typing in it. You've got plenty of space to just keep going and add whatever it is that you need to for that. Another really cool thing that we've added both in Rating 1 and in Rating 2 is the ability to do an automated calculation using Dr. Roman's scoring criteria. We've told the system, go ahead and score. So in the top of the page, you'd click the calculator and it would just score it out for you. And I like this as like a second check. So in my head, I'll go through and I'll score it the way that I have been taught and the way that I know. And then I click that and it's kind of like a double check. There are times, especially now with the new scoring criteria for complexity, that if I have a student who has, let's say, 2, because there's the 4 areas of complexity, if 2 of those are 0.5 and 2 of those are 0.25, it's going to try to take the average of those. But I might want to score them as a 0.25 with like an arrow going up, as Dr. Rowan would say. So you kind of have to use some human judgment in that as well, and kind of figure out what works best for your student based on your scoring. So you can always go back and manually edit that as needed, but it is kind of nice to have that ability, especially for those of you who maybe aren't as comfortable scoring it. It at least gives you a foundation. Even if you're 0.5 off, you're still within that range of validity for the CVI range. And so to me, that gives you at least a decent foundation. As long as you're watching those characteristics appropriately and you're scoring based on what you're seeing, I think that's still going to give you a better foundation than nothing at all, right? It gives you some data to start with. And we'll talk back about, too, if we choose the wrong activities, how we can adjust that from later, too. So the first thing you're going to do is start with that first set of data, right? So then the next thing that we want to do is collect any other types of data that we know we either A, need because our district or our state requires it, or B, we just know that it's we need more information. The CVI range maybe didn't give you enough, or the kid doesn't have a CVI diagnosis, you're just suspecting it does, so you want to gather all the information you need. You can kind of put it all in one place. So we've tried to create like a hub for you, for your kids with CVI, so that everything you need is all in one place. So as we're traveling around, you can kind of have everything you need, so you're not going, is that file left in the office? Is that one on this platform? How do I find that information? So that would be your plans and assessment section. So that right here allows you to, we have like a learning media at a glance type file. We have different things like a functional vision evaluation summary and an orientation mobility evaluation summary. So this wouldn't be your full encompassing file, because I think for all of us, that looks a little bit different. As I've worked with different professionals, we all kind of like to fill in our FVEs, our LMAs, our O&M evaluations all a little bit differently. And so this is kind of more of an at a glance file. And then there's also just generalized activity notes that you can upload in this area. So if you're doing activities outside of the app and you want to collect data but still have it all in one place, you can also make notes of that. So it could be your services are kept track in here. You can kind of be all of that in one place if that's what you choose to use it as. It keeps that data all compiled together, so when you're making those database decisions, you only have one place to look and one place to go to help decide what works best for your student. Then after you've completed all your baseline data, we go back to our wheels, what we need to do next, right? Well, now we need to analyze that data and really figure out, what does this mean? What do we need to do from here, right? And then after we do that, we're going to make our instructional decisions. Let me go back here. Hit the wrong button. And then we're going to need to make our instructional decisions. So after we've got the data, we've looked at it, we now know from the CVI range what characteristics are scoring at, we know what phases they're in. It's going to really help us make those decisions just to get started at least. And now it's time for us to assign some activities to really figure out what's going to work best for the kid. So the cool thing here is that our activities are designed for all three phases 1, 2, and 3. We've considered all of the characteristics when we're creating them. So we have some color preference activities. We have some light things that we're moving around on the screen for movement. We've got as much incorporated from those 10 characteristics as we possibly can. We're trying to reduce complexity of things. We might get a student, like I said, these are all created from Julie or myself, students that we have on our caseloads. So if we have a student who's getting this daily worksheet and they have different letters that they're supposed to be matching and doing things with, we then take that, get rid of a bunch of the complexity, put it on the iPad, make it moving, add lights, and try to make it accessible then for our kids with CVI, depending on what phase they're in. And then after we've got that done for our students, we kind of scaffold it in both directions, making it as cohesive as possible so that it's working for what any kid that might need it to have access to it. So we've really tried to scaffold that variety of needs to help meet your students' needs as we go through it. So what's really cool is that you can then look through that large library of activities that we've created. You have access to them. You get to go through as a teacher and assign which activities you feel are best for the student. It's literally just a click of the button, you click assign, and it sends it over to that specific student's profile. So you can assign Jimmy these 10 activities, but Julie only needs these 4 activities, whatever the case may be. You get to decide that based on the data that you've already collected and what you think will work best for that child in their learning environment. In addition, when we are creating the activities, we highlighted salient features. We're using comparative language. The professional edition also has the option for you to create your own activities. Julie, in fact, has an activity that you could upload your child's favorite item, so their favorite Elmo toy. I always go to Elmo, but if it's Minnie Mouse, Mickey Mouse, whatever the case may be, one of the PJ Masks characters, whatever your student really likes, if you're working on that, bridging the gap from the 3D item to the 2-dimensional item, the iPad is a great way to go because you can upload that image, and not only does it have backlighting now, you can add movement to it through the activity and things like that. So Julie's created a series where you can just upload that favorite activity. So you take the picture of the child's favorite item, upload it to the system, and now you have an activity with their favorite item that they could actually interact with and try to help bridge that visual gap over to make those 2-dimensional things more accessible to students. But you could also create activities as creative as you would like to be. You can have that opportunity, but you can always contact Julie and I. We have a running list of things that are in our, we always have a ton that we want to create for our own sake of, oh, this sounds like a good idea. But if we know that there is somebody out there that has an idea and wants to collaborate with us, 1, you'll get credit for it. We'll put on there that it was partially, you helped us come up with the idea. But 2, we'll help you kind of design that and put it out there as soon as we possibly can. We'll get that going. I know right now everyone's time schedules look a little bit different. Now that we're all working from home, it's a little bit of a different balance for us. So, but Julie and I would be happy to help you as best as we can to get those activities created if this is a route you decide to go at some point in time. And the really cool thing, and I think this is very unique, especially given the circumstances that we're currently in, because I can't be standing in front of you today because of the COVID-19 and we're all in stay-at-home warnings and everything. So the activities can be assigned remotely. This was actually thought of because of being a teacher consultant and just traveling all over the place, and I might be in a different part of the county and my student at the south end needs something that I have, but I don't physically have time to get it to them until the end of the week. And there's no reason that our kids should have to wait that long. So doing it digitally, I can now assign activities and provide them that access right now. I don't have to wait until I can get to that side of town. where it's convenient for my traveling schedule. I can just do it right from where I'm at, and it makes it a little bit easier because I'm a person that I would stop what I was doing and travel all the way to the other side of the county because I don't think it's fair that the student has to wait. But now I'm like wasting so much time in my day, and I'm being almost less productive by adding all that extra drive time back and forth. So now I can do it remotely, just need my Wi-Fi, I log in and I send the activity over to the student, and now they have access to the activity at the same time of their peers. And we know as much as our gen ed teachers try their best to get their things to us, that those classroom teachers try to get things to us ahead of time, it doesn't always happen. And that for anyone who has figured out a way to get that to them on time all of the time, I would love to talk to you because I have not figured that out yet. But this still allows that ability for our kids to have access even when we get things last minute, and it's a lot faster than having to cut things out and glue it and paste it and put it together in this paper copy. And then additionally, now I have it for multiple kids. So if I've created an activity for them, I can send it out to a wide variety of my kids, not just have one copy for one student to take. So it made it a little bit easier. And given the circumstances we're in right now, being able to share things remotely with families might be helpful to provide that resource to them and kind of give them something that they can work on at home if this is something that they need. Here is a picture of some of the activities that you could send over. So I just took a random set of activities. Just wanted to show you some of the things that we have to offer. On the far left of your screen, you'll see a color glow in yellow and the color glow in red next to it. Both of those activities are lots of like flashing lights, and not strobe-like, but just kind of like swirling around and moving on the screen type of activities. And we have those in a variety of colors. The next one is a picture of like a stuffed animal of a red cat. And that again is where I would be bridging that gap from a 3-dimensional to a 2-dimensional, where this is a picture of a specific child's toy that's been uploaded for them to try to bridge that gap over, and I would assign it. So maybe for this student, the red color glow is a warm up, and then they use the red image of their cat, their toy, as a like request that that's something that they want to use or play with. So prior to giving it to the child, they run that activity. If the child has that joint looking attention between the image and between themselves and the image, then we would give it to them as like a reward, like, yeah, you looked at it. So that's initiating that they wanted that, and they get the actual toy as a reward of some kind. And the other activities you can see on here are a picture of a real cat, and it's got the outlining for the highlighting of the salient features on both the ears and the whiskers, just showing that we have that ability to highlight some of those salient features for you. Another one is the crosswalk sign on a plain background. Again, just showing you how we've reduced complexity for kids. And that series of activities, we just wanted to show you how we use orientation mobility with some of our activities, and slowly will increase complexity by having this sign in realistic environments where the child might see it out. So you can kind of simulate what that would look like in school, or when we have snowy weather like we do today in Michigan in the middle of April. And you could do that inside if you needed to, working with the student as like a pre-lesson before you go outside and actually start looking for those signs and talking about what they mean and where you might find them and how you need to react when you see those signs. And the last one on the far right is the word like. And so we have a bunch of different sight word activities, and we try to make stories out of them. This one happens to be an I like fall story. So we use that puzzle piece philosophy to kind of help teach those sight words and the shapes of the words. And we have that with our letters, numbers, and we kind of carry that throughout as our literacy introduction to students with cortical visual impairments. That's more of a kid with phase 2, phase 3 would be working into that. So it's like a late phase 2 activity. And so the other thing that I want to show you is that we've labeled them to help you when you're trying to go from that. You've collected your CVI range, now you need to assign the activities, but you're still going, I don't know which activities to start with. The one thing that I would like to point out to you is that we have these 1, 2, and I don't have a phase 3 activity on here, but just 1 and 2 on this one. But it just has those Roman numerals to show you we feel this activity falls into the phase 1 activities, phase 2 activities, or phase 3. And then you can kind of pick the topics that are most related to your student's age and skill level and assign those over as you see fit. You can always contact us as well. We don't know your student, so we can't say for certain, like, this is exactly where you should start and go and where their interest levels are at, but we would be glad to have conversations with you and help you along the way. That's ultimately what we want. Julie and I want to help out as much as we can so that your students find success. The more kids that with CVI or any other neurological visual impairment that have access to education is what we're trying to figure out. So if there's any way that we can help you with that, we'd be glad to do so. I'm volunteering you, Julie. I hope you don't mind. I know you don't. So the next thing that we would look at in the series of our wheel again, so we've already collected our initial data, we've analyzed that, we've assigned our activities, and now we need to make a plan for our team and implement those activities for our students. So then we're going to go into our calendar, and we can actually assign a schedule for that child. This is especially helpful on our home edition. So something I don't think I mentioned earlier was that if you sign up for the professional, we have 2 different editions of CViConnect. Let me back up a little bit. So we have our home edition, and that's where we've had this out for a number of years already, and this is where families have signed up for 1 student at a time that they have access to. And so I'm going to show you, if you guys can look at my picture, should be in the corner of your screen right now. And going a little off script, here we go. If you can, in that little itty corner, I'm going to just show you a quick image of our home edition. And so families have access to activities, reports from those activities. They can answer surveys for us. They get messages back and forth between the support team, being Julie and myself right now. They can schedule things. They have journal opportunities, educational materials, pictures, and then of course the CVI community. So there's lots of different opportunities for that home edition. And so this is what the home app looks like once you've signed in. And so that schedule feature is actually really helpful because families can schedule out their warm-ups and their activities, get reminders sent to their system so that they know when they're going to do what. So you can make that plan of attack of when you're going to do it. Even if you're not going to use the system, once you've decided how the student is going to have access, you need to make a plan and figure out what that's going to look like throughout their day, right? So you need to pick I would start small if you're in the very beginning phases of getting things implemented for a kid, and just pick a few times throughout their day and figure out how in those few times are you going to add vision access to their day. And start small. So you pick 1 or 3 different parts of their day, maybe 1 at home and 2 at school, or right now, because we're all at home, they're all at home. But whatever the case may be, you and the entire IEP team need to work together to figure out what parts of the day would work best, right? So as you're working through that, then you can figure out which activities are going to be best for those different parts of the day. And you add that into your plan, right? So right now you see that maybe the student, I think I have at 2:45, they have a warm up, and then at 3 o'clock, they're going to work on sight words. Obviously, it don't need to be for an hour for a student, but I just was trying to make it a little bit bigger in the box so you could see it when it shows up on your screen. But it links right to your iCalendar for your iPad or any other device that has that iCalendar app on it. And you can set reminders just like you would in your iCalendar on your phone or on your iPad. So you have those features still available to you as your team sees fit. So, but again, even if you're not going to use the CViConnect system, you've got to figure out something. How are you going to provide access to these kids that have a cortical visual impairment so that we can build those interventions in place? If they already have a warm up in the beginning of their day and you're further along with your interventions and you're looking for more of a push, figuring out how to do that academic material. So making that switch from the auditory piece to the visual piece and bridging that gap. A lot of my students with cortical visual impairments happen to be doing a lot of their academic materials auditorily. because they're very bright kids. They can answer verbally for some of them what their academic materials may be, but they don't have that vision access. And you need to kind of catch up that vision system and catch that up so that their vision and academic levels are the same. It looks very similar to a kid who's learning Braille and maybe didn't get started in time. And so we're trying to catch up that Braille reading ability to where we know their academic ability should be, right? Their Braille ability should not slow them down in what they have ability to do in their general ed setting. So just because they have a different way of accessing the materials, whether it's because of their cortical visual impairment or because they're totally blind and are Braille readers, we have a job to do to make sure that they have the best education we can give them and they have access to all of those materials. And so hopefully, by creating this plan and putting it in place, you can kind of hold everyone accountable and making sure that that kid has the access that he deserves or she deserves in order to get the education they deserve, right? So then after that, my device is a little lagged. Okay, so we've collected our data, we've analyzed our data, made instructional decisions, we've planned, we've implemented that plan, and now it's time to reflect on it, right? So I apologize. I'm having some technology difficulties. Can we pause for a second? So as I was saying, we've gotten this part of our circle done, and now it's time for us to do this reflection. And so we're going to reflect on how the child has used and interacted with the system. And we're going to let the system tell us a lot of that information. And to do that, we're going to look at this session part of our data, okay? And so our system is going to collect look detection and touch detection, as well as session run and run time for you. So what does all of that mean? Our system has the ability to turn on the camera as you're running an activity, and you can the iPad camera, think about when you're getting ready to take a picture and it draws those boxes around people's heads to see where they're at. We've told the camera we don't want it around their faces, we want it around their eyes. And so what the iPad does then is tells you when the child is looking at the screen or looking away from the screen. And so you're able to collect that data in relation to how they're using the activities. So think back about those red and the yellow activity I showed you earlier with the color glow, right? So if you have a kid in phase 1 and you show them a red color glow activity and they are super honed in on it, they're looking at it for lots of time, the data is going to show that. And I'll give you an example of what that looks like here in a second. Whereas if it was the yellow activity and they're looking away a ton, the iPad's going to collect all that for you. So it takes out that guesswork where before we used to go, I don't know, I think he looks at the blue stuff more, so we'll say blue is his favorite. It takes all that guesswork out of it off of you and puts it on the onus of the iPad collecting it for you to tell you what's going on and what works best. So in addition, we also collect data where the child's touching it on the screen. So a couple of things, we have certain activities that have specific targets. So that's like the correct answer, right? So it would tell you if those are the correct answer and how many times they chose the correct answer. It would also tell you if the child was just kind of swatting at the iPad, because you're going to have all kinds of things lit up on there as far as which things they were touching. And so it's going to give you all of that information to help guide you. Again, I'm going to show you some examples of what that looks like. But we also give you sessions and runtime. So that's going to tell you how many opportunities kids have had to use the activities in their classrooms. Oops, too many slides. Okay, so on this one, we're looking at, this is the session data, an example of what you might get from one of your students. And so I just ran a couple sessions to give you an example, and the very first one is the color glow yellow. And on the far right-hand side, you're gonna see that it has 7 looks. And then again, on the color glow red activity, the second one, all the way to the right, it says 4 looks. And so you'll see that that you would think just by looking at that information that the student maybe looked at the yellow activity more than the red, but we're going to collect another piece of data to tell you exactly which one was actually looked at more. Before I go forward, I want to point out that there's this comment box here in the middle, and that's where you can keep notes as to how your student was interacting for the day. Maybe you want to make note of student had a seizure in the middle of the activity, and that's why the data might be skewed, or that there was no seizure activity this morning or prior to the activity. The student's been super healthy lately, and so that might be why you see a spike in your activity. So anything that might change or alter some highs or lows that kind of would be unexplained otherwise would be great to put in that comment box. Maybe you're in a different location and it worked really well for the student. Make note of it so you know to go use that location more often, or so that other team members would know, hey, this part of the classroom seemed to work better because there's less visual clutter going on. So I was talking about those looks before, and sorry, I got ahead of myself. So what I want to point out is that the total look time looking at the screen is going to be, and that look time together are going to be the two pieces that you want to find out. So when you click the blue link on the far left-hand side, it would pull up another screen that gives you this information that I'm showing you now, which is the total looking time at the screen. So you can see that on the top, we have total looking time at the screen is 57 seconds for the color glow yellow, and the total looking time at the screen for the color glow red was 140. So what that tells me, in collaboration, those two numbers together tell me that during the yellow activity, the student was actually looking away longer, but they had a lot of like, come back, look away, come back, look away. So they're getting ready to start looking at that and getting that constant engagement with that yellow and the movement on the screen, but they're really not quite there yet. But they're starting. We're getting a lot of that look away, look back, right? Which we see a lot in that phase one. In the second number, I see the total looking time longer and less looks. So that means that the student was staying with the iPad longer and had fewer look away and come back, right? So it's really important to look at all of the data together and help then determine what looks best. So before I say anything more, I just want you to think, given that information and how I've just broken that apart for you, which color do you think would be the child's preferred color? Hopefully you said red. We're gonna pretend like you did. Good job, you all said red. So red is correct because they're staying with it longer, right? And fewer lookaways, meaning they're really more attached to that red color than they were with the yellow. So that touch detection piece, what information can I get from looking at that? You're gonna be able to tell if the student is properly identifying salient features, accurate image identification, and you'll also be able to identify where that visual fatigue is, right? So by looking at both images or both sets of data, you're going to figure out what's that child's threshold, and when they start looking away and they start swatting at it, both data points are going to kind of alter from there. So you're going to know when those things have changed for the student. So the next thing that I want to point out to you is our next piece of data is our charts and reports. So sessions is looking at each individual time you ran an activity. You're going to hit complete. The data is going to be sent over to our system, and you can look at each activity as one entity and see how that interaction took place. Charts and reports is going to allow you to look at things as trends and as a whole picture. So we offer 4 different types right now. We have the ability to offer more, but we wanted to start off with just some basic opportunities for you. And one of those is, on the far left, is the student look time per week. And so that is a great way to try to figure out how much time per week the child has had looking at the screen. And when you see those highs and lows, that's going to be a bar graph for you in comparison of looking versus looking away and kind of breaking that all apart. Oops. The next one is the student activity report, and that's the second one from the left. That's going to be a line graph, and that's going to tell you the number of activities shown or run per day. So again, as you're seeing maybe their range scores change or you see different characteristics from those sessions, you can look at those trends of, well, how often are they having opportunities to use the iPad? And again, holding people accountable by being able to pull up and see when those activities are being run, how many times per day. That should be pretty steady, right? Because every day should look very similar. You shouldn't have these huge gaps where, like, on Wednesday they ran 10 activities and for the rest of the week they did nothing, and then all of a sudden it dips back down. So you should see a pretty constant rate of constant activity access throughout their environment all the time, not these highs and lows where it's going all over the place, especially not something from like 10 to 0 and then nothing. You know, if it's like 3 and 2 and kind of like leveling off and kind of teetering those smaller lines, that would definitely make more sense. The next activity is the student activity runtime per day. And so that's going to show you another line graph and showing you how often they're looking at it per day and seeing, are you getting that constant time throughout opportunities and things like that. The next one is the student time spent per activity. And this is great to kind of figure out what's the child's prefer, which one are they using the most, what's being, and are you, if you're seeing growth with that, then you want more activities that look like that. Which activities are they less interested in? Are you not really getting as much time spent on them? And figuring out why that is. You know, is it because it's harder for them, it's less preferred, it's not as much fun? So kind of altering those activity schedules then to meet what works best for them. The biggest thing that we would use charts and reports for, again, that's like your overall trending system. Again, you can download and upload all that information to your IEP system. This is great to share with other professionals so that they can see those trends and those overall understanding of how the child is using the system and the effect it has on their vision and their access points. You can show the trends in their progress. You can align your goals and data that you've collected. So you can use what the system collects and align your goals for your IEP if you feel like you would like to do that. That's a touchy area. I know everyone's district kind of works with kids with cortical visual impairments or neurological visual impairments for that matter in a different way. Some are all consult, some have a combination of direct and consult. And so my suggestion is just to work with your administrator and figure out what works best for you guys. And, you know, if later down the road, MDE, LAO, or the federal government changes and mandates how we have to do that at a different point, that's a whole nother bag of worms. But for today, my suggestion is just to do what works best for you, your district, and your administrator, your team, your IEP team, what works best for that student. Overall, the charts and reports are going to ensure that the student has access throughout the day, and you're able to see that pretty quickly. And you're going to see how those improvements with more opportunities, do you see that those improvements are happening? And you're going to show whether or not you have consistency and accuracy for your student. One example of one of the student activity reports is, like I mentioned before, you don't want to see that high and then they're low. This is a student who had access. We left school March 13th. On March 24th, they were running 10 activities constantly. And then you can see that the family slowly died off and was like, this stay-at-home stuff is getting rough. We don't have time, and they've died off from it. And so that tells me as an educator, we need to try to figure out what the family, is it that the family doesn't have time for it and they have a lot of other things going on right now, which we all kind of do. And you're probably going to start to hear my kids in the background soon because they're going to get antsy, but hang in there, guys. We're almost done. You're going to start to see those lows, and it tells you that you need to check in on that kid and see what's going on. Are the activities no longer a good fit? Do we need to change that? Again, going back to our wheel, and after you've put that plan in place, it's time to reflect and look at the data, analyze it again, and make those instructional decisions on what works best for our kids, right? So you're constantly going around this cycle to figure out how you can best serve those kids. And so when you see those dips in your data, whether it's on that trend or you're looking at the session and you see something going on there, you're going to use the data that's given to you to help make those instructional decisions. And when you're doing that, you're doing what's best for kids. So I hope that throughout this journey today and talking with me that you guys have kind of gotten, like I said, some information about how CViConnect can help you, but in general, just how, even though CVI is still kind of new to a lot of professionals and we're still trying to figure it out, and there's new research coming out to help us and support us in what we're supposed to do, I hope this information has helped give you a little bit of a mindset of how you can use data to make those decisions on what's best for your kids. Please feel free to keep in touch with us. Our website is on the left-hand side of your screen, the CViConnect.co. It is in fact .co, not .com. It's not a typo. It is .co. We get that question a lot. Not sure, I don't do the techie side of things, sorry. Just know that's our website. On there, you can sign up for our newsletter and contact us for support. We also have a Facebook page. In fact, by the time you guys are seeing this, Julie will have gone live a week ago with a great new resource that we have for some book series that she's created, some reading series, I should say, that she's created. So that will still be on our site. So even though you might not see it live, you can still go to Facebook and see that event to try to see how those activities might help your students. Again, even if you choose not to sign up, our goal is just to help as many kids with CVI as possible. While we'd be happy and would love to have you join us, get some other resources from us too. We want to just help educate you guys on CVI as we learn. I want to share that knowledge with our CVI community. So you can join us on Saturdays for different live events where we share different information as we gather the information and share how the app relates to it, or just in general information you guys can share with your families. So that's available to you as well. If you go to our website, on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, there's this little green bar and it might say offline, but you can still click it and pop up this box and type in your name, your email, and a message that goes directly to our support team, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. On your slides, you also have mine and Julie's email address, as well as our general contact information for the company as well. And then lastly, if anyone has any questions, please, I don't know how this works for this part, but please reach out and ask me if I can help. I'll definitely be available and be glad to answer any questions you might have. Thank you for your time. I appreciate everybody watching.
Well, thank you so much for that fantastic presentation, Stephanie. Let me grab your ACV REP ending codes. So for those of you guys who have a question or want to leave a comment below this video, there is a comment section. It should be below your CEU form. Just scroll down a little bit and Stephanie and Julie may be able to come in and respond to your comments. You can also email them. All right, you guys, your ending code for ACV REP is the word MAPLE, M-A-P-L-E. Again, your ending code for ACV REP is the word MAPLE, M-A-P-L-E. Thank you so much, Stephanie. This was fantastic.